Alright, so today is Wednesday, February the 3rd, and it is the year 2021. And this is the continuation reading of the book of Genesis, chapter 29, from the Holy Bible. Let's see, chapter 29. Let's see what chapter 29 tells us. Alright, so chapter 29 is titled Jacob Arrives in Paddan, Aram. Verse 1 reads, Then Jacob continued on his journey and came to the land of the eastern peoples. There he saw a well in the open country with 3 flocks of sheep lying near it because the flocks were watered from that well. The stone over the mouth of the well was large. Verse 3, When all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone away from the well's mouth and water the sheep. Then he will return the stone to its place over the mouth of the well. Verse 4 reads, Jacob asked the shepherds, My brothers, where are you from? We're from Haran, they replied. He said to them, Do you know Laban, Nahor's grandson? Yes, we know him, they answered. Then Jacob asked them, Is he well? Yes, he is, they said. And here comes his daughters, Rachel with the sheep. Look, he said, the sun is still high. It is not time for the flocks to be gathered. Water the sheep and take them back to the pasture. Verse 8 reads, We can't, they replied. We can't, they replied, until all the flock are gathered and the stone has been rolled away from the mouth of the well. Then we will water the sheep. While he was still talking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherd. When Jacob saw Rachel, daughter of his uncle Laban, and Laban's sheep, he went over and rolled the stone away from the mouth of the well and watered his uncle's sheep. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and began to weep out loud. He had told Rachel that he was a relative of her father and a son of Rebekah. So she ran and told her father. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he hurried to meet him. He embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his home. And there Jacob told him all these things. Then Laban said to him, You are my own flesh and blood. Now verse 14 has a title of its own. It says Jacob marries Leah and Rachel. Verse 14 reads, After Jacob had stayed with him for a whole month, Laban said to him, Just because you are a relative of mine, should you work for me for nothing? Tell me what your wages should be. Verse 16 reads, Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the old was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah had weak eyes, but Rachel had a lovely figure and was beautiful. Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, I'll work for you 7 years in return for your younger daughter Rachel. Laban said, It's better that I give her to you than to some other man. Stay here with me. So Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel, but they seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. Verse 21 reads, Then Jacob said to Laban, Give me my wife, my time is completed, and I want to make love to her. So Laban brought together all the people of the place and gave a feast. But when evening came, he took the daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and Jacob made love to her, and Laban gave his servant Zilpah to his daughter as her attendant. Verse 25 reads, when morning came, there was Leah. So Jacob said to Laban, what is this you have done to me? I served for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me? Laban replied, this is not our custom here to give the younger daughter in marriage before the older one. Verse 27 reads, finish this daughter's bridal week, then we will give you the younger one also. In return for another 7 years of work. Verse 28 reads, and Jacob did so. He finished the week with Leah, and then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Verse 29 reads, Laban gave his servants Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as her attendant. Verse 30 reads, Jacob made love to Rachel also, and its love for Rachel was greater than his love for Leah. And he worked for Laban another 7 years. Verse 31 has a title of its own. Verse 31 from the chapter 29, the book of Genesis, reads, Jacob's children. Verse 31 reads, when the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he enabled her to conceive, but Rachel remained childless. Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben. For she said, it is because the Lord has seen my misery. Surely my husband will love me now. She conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, because the Lord heard that I am not loved, he gave me this one too. So she named him Simon. Again, she conceived, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, now at last my husband will become attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. So he was named Levi. Verse 35 reads, she conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, this time I will praise the Lord. So she named him Judah. Then she stopped having children. Now chapter 29 is attached to chapter 30, and so on goes the verses. So chapter 30 verse 1 reads, when Rachel saw that she was not bearing Jacob any children, she became jealous of her sister. So she said to Jacob, give me children or I'll die. Verse 2 reads, Jacob became angry with her and said, am I in the place of God? Who has kept you from having children? Then she said, here is Bilhah, my servant. Sleep with her so that she can bear children for me, and I too can build a family through her. Verse 4 reads, so she gave him her servant Bilhah as a wife. Jacob slept with her, and she became pregnant and bore him a son. Then Rachel said, God has vindicated me. He has listened to my plea and given me a son. Because of this, she named him Dan. Verse 7 reads, Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, I have had a great struggle with my sister, and I have won. So she named him Naphtali. Verse 9 reads, when Leah saw that she had stopped having children, she took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Verse 10 reads, Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Then Leah said, what good fortune. So she named him Gad, G-A-D. Verse 12 reads, Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. Then Leah said, how happy I am. The woman will call me happy. So she named him Ashur. Verse 14 reads, Verse 14. Verse 14 reads, during wheat harvest, Reuben went out into the fields and found some madry plants, which he brought to his mother Leah. Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes. But she said to her, wasn't it enough that you took away my husband? Will you take my son's mandrakes too? Very well, Rachel said. He can sleep with you tonight in return for your son's mandrakes. So when Jacob came in from the fields that evening, Leah went out to meet him. You must sleep with me, she said. I have hired you with my son's mandrakes. So he slept with her that night. God listened to Leah, and she became pregnant, bore Jacob a fifth son. Then Leah said, God has rewarded me for giving my servant to my husband. So she named him Issachar. Verse 19 reads, Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a sixth son. Then Leah said, God has presented me with a precious gift. This time my husband will treat me with honor because I have borne him six sons. So she named him Zebulun. Verse 21 reads, sometime later she gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah. Verse 22 reads, then God remembered Rachel. He listened to her and enabled her to conceive. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son and said, God has taken away my disgrace. She named him Joseph and said, may the Lord add to me another son. Now verse 25 has a title of its own. Verse 25 in the chapter 30 of the book of Genesis is titled Jacob's flock increase. Verse 25 reads, after Rachel gave birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, send me on my way so I can go back to my own homeland. Verse 26 reads, give me my wives and children for whom I serve you, and I will be on my way. You know how much work I've done for you. Verse 27, but Laban said to him, if I have found favor in your eyes, please stay. I have learned my divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. He added, name your wages and I will pay them. Verse 29 reads, Jacob said to him, you know how I worked for you and how your livestock has fared under my care. Verse 30 reads, the little you had before I came has increased greatly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I have been. But now, when may I do something for my own household? What should I give you? He asked. Don't give me anything, Jacob replied. But if you will do this one thing for me, I will go on tending your flocks and watching over them. Verse 32 reads, let me go through all your flocks today and remove from them every speckled or spotted sheep, every dark colored lamb, and every spotted or speckled goat. There will be my wages. Verse 33 reads, and my honesty will be testified for me in the future. Whenever you check on the wages you have paid me, any goat in my possession that is not speckled or spotted, or any lamb that is not dark colored, will be considered stolen. Verse 34 reads, agreed, said Laban. Let it be as you have said. Verse 35 reads, that same day he removed all the male goats that were streaked or spotted, and all the speckled or spotted female goats, all that had white on them, and all the dark colored lambs, and he placed them in the care of his sons. Then he put a 3-day journey between himself and Jacob, while Jacob continued to tend the rest of the Laban's flocks. Verse 37 reads, Jacob, however, took fresh cut branches from poplar almond and plane trees and made white stripes on them by peeling the bark and exposing the white inner wood of the branches. Verse 38 reads, Then he placed the peeled branches in all the watering troughs so that they would be directly in front of the flocks when they came to drink. When the flocks were in heat and came to drink, they made it in front of the branches, and they bore young that were stricken or speckled or spotted. Verse 40 reads, Jacob set apart the young of the flock by themselves, but made the rest face the streaked and dark-colored animals that belonged to Laban. Therefore he made separate flocks for himself and did not put them with Laban's animals. Verse 41 reads, Whenever the stronger females were in heat, Jacob would place the branches in the troughs in front of the animals so they would mate near the branches. But if the animals were weak, he would not place them there. So the weak animals went to Laban and the stronger ones to Jacob. In this way, the man grew exceedingly prosperous and came to own large flocks and female and male servants and camels and donkeys. Chapter 30 is titled Jacob's Children, while chapter 29 is titled Jacob Arrives in Paddan, Aram. Jacob arrives in Paddan, Paddan, Aram. While chapter 30 speaks of Jacob's children. Chapter 29, quick summary would be the arrival of Jacob in Aram. Verse 4, Jacob asked the shepherds, My brothers, where are you from? We're from Haran, they replied. He said to them, Do you know Laban, Nahor's grandson? Yes, we know him, they answered. Then Jacob asked them, Is he well? Yes, he is, they said. And here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep. Chapter 29 is the scene where Jacob meets Rachel. As well, Jacob marries Rachel and Leah. Now chapter 30 is a chapter where we can see the story, the passage about Jacob and his children. Children being given in verse 31. It reads, When the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he enabled her to conceive, but Rachel remained childless. Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben. So Jacob's first son was Reuben, not through Rachel, but it was through Leah, the second wife of Jacob. This is chapter 30, which speaks of Jacob's children. Chapter 29, it speaks when Jacob arrived at Paddan, Aram. Well, this is chapter 29 and chapter 30 from the book of Genesis. Genesis is one of the 66 books which make up the modern NIV version of today's published Bible given out to this modern society that we live in. For as I have been telling to many of those that have listened to me, that there is a whole complete scripture that is not being given out to the public, because as of this day it is only these very scriptures that are now only being published to the public, because though there is 66 books in the Bible, there is a lot to learn from these 66 books. And well on and so forth. I believe that there is more to the 66 books, but this is the challenge, to read one chapter each day. So until next chapter, adios.